With the wealth of talent that comes to Ohio State, I've always been thought it a bit strange in comparing the running back position and the way it's handled and has been handled under Urban Meyer compared to some other like programs, and Alabama being the classic case where they just come at you in waves of running backs. Carlos Hyde owned the position. Ezekiel Elliott owned the position. J.K. Dobbins looked like he was going to take it from Mike Weber. Then it turned into be a little bit more of a platoon, so a little bit more in that direction of giving one guy some relief and having multiple backs back there. So in regards to J.K. Dobbins versus the rest of the runners, how do you see that that ratio of running carries playing out?
I think some of that depends on Demario McCall, who's the fourth-year junior running back behind Dobbins, who is arguably one of the top three most dynamic players on offense, but can't stay healthy. And if he's healthy for the season, maybe he's getting 8-9 carries a game compared to JK getting 17, something like that. I know Dobbins talked all spring about wanting to return to his freshman form and the renewed hunger and work ethic that he and running backs coach Tony Alford went through this spring to get him back. It sounds strange to say, to get this junior back to his freshman form, but that's what they went about doing, because if you look at what he was as a freshman compared to what he was as a sophomore, they are not the same person. They're not the same player. Dobbins and Alford will both say that a lot of it was mental last year, in terms of he was trying to make the home run on every play because he was splitting carries so often. And so he knew he would get, I'm going to play this series. Mike Weber is going to come in the next series. So I have to do everything I can on this series to get to the end zone. And you're trying to make stuff happen when there's nothing there. And the Ohio State offensive line wasn't great at run blocking last year. And so that was also an issue. And maybe it's a perfect storm. Maybe Alfred says it's mostly mental. So we'll see how things go this year with, they had an issue run blocking on the RPOs last year. And once they stopped that, things got a little bit better, but still wasn't great. And I think this year they have an interior offensive line, a brand new interior of the offensive line that is more angry, meaner, that kind of thing that you need, grittier. And I expect him to do much better. You talk about the waves, and it's interesting because Urban Meyer never had a 1,000-yard rusher at quarterback or at running back until he came to Ohio State. And that was one of the anti-recruiting things, or the teams would recruit against him for that, because, he never had one bell cow that could get 1,000 yards. And now we're talking about like, he need maybe like, why didn't they spread it out more? And when you've got Ezekiel Elliott, when you've got Carlos Hyde, there's reasons for that. But there also hasn't been a lot of great depth, because when Ezekiel Elliott was a backup, he was a true freshman, didn't play much. Rod Smith was another guy in the mix there, and he just signed a deal with the Giants. But Carlos Hyde, and when you have the quarterback commanding so many carries as well, and sometimes leading the team throughout the season in carries, there's not a lot of carries for a second guy, and there's no carries for a third guy. So I think the wave is the quarterback and the running back, under Urban Meyer. And that changed obviously last year, and we saw that with Weber getting in there and more. But Demario McCall, like I said, is the key. They've got two redshirt freshmen, Master Teague, true freshman Marcus Crowley, were both there this spring trying to make up ground and earn playing time while McCall was out. They'll have another freshman coming in, Steele Chambers, out of Georgia, that we'll get here in June or July. And so they'll have some options, but I strongly think JK, it will be back to his freshman form, maybe 1,500 yards, 1,400 yards like his freshman year, rather than 4.2 yards a carry last year, which is unacceptable at Ohio State.
Yeah, if you scan statistics and look at as many as I have tried to in the past, maybe not as many as I have in distance gone by when I was just absorbing that stuff, but I guess I should be now. But yeah, when you talk about yards per carry in college football, 6 yards per carry is not uncommon by fairly marginal backs, decent backs. I don't want to discount them, but by 7-5 type team. So 4.2 yards per carry really shows the struggle that Ohio State had moving people in the running game, and maybe J.K. Dobbins in particular. And he had that one monster game, although I'm sure the yards per carry weren't massive, but he had to carry it, 39 times against Maryland in the next to last week of the season. And that was really his game to possibly avert a,
disaster,
not making the Big Ten championship. Yes, if losing to Maryland's a disaster, which it would be for Ohio State fans, but certainly that would have ushered, regardless of what happened the next week, a Michigan Big Ten championship game appearance.
Yeah, his importance will increase this year. And I asked him this spring if he's tired of talking about last season. And he's like, I'm just here to make your job easier. Basically, whatever you guys want to talk about, ask me, and I'll tell you about it. Because he was not happy with his season and went about trying to make sure it doesn't happen again as soon as the Rose Bowl was over, basically.
Talking Ohio State football with Tony Gerdeman from the Ozone. Join him on the ozone.net. And we talk Ohio State football and want to let all the Buckeye fans know who maybe just clicked in the last few minutes. You don't need to go through the entire live stream. I will basically clip off this segment conversation with Tony. That'll be available by tomorrow morning. Tony, we appreciate you stopping by. It's always a great conversation, and especially on this night, I'm glad that you could take the time. Thanks for waiting and taking part.
And congratulations. And I'll be back for 20,000.
20,000. Book it next week.
There you go. We'll see you then.
All right, Tony. Have a good night.